Fantastic. Look, thanks everybody for jumping in today. Joining me today on this webinar is myself, Liam Butler from RxTro. RxTro is a tool that we started around 10 years ago, and really what it was around was having customers set up their preferences for different areas to really book in. I've got a really interesting guest joining me today, which is Danny Miller from both Rehab on the Road and the EP Network. One of our users that initially really just sort of seeking to understand the different ways that they're using the system. And on speaking with Danny, I thought, you know what, let's jump onto a public webinar because it's a great story. Welcome, Danny. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Liam. Thank you for having me. Appreciate the invite.
No problem at all. Look, Danny, what would be great maybe if you could just give us a bit of an overview of kind of your story up until now and, yeah, your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my background is I started out it's not been a very long journey. So I graduated in 2018, and I think unlike most new grads, I knew exactly what I wanted to do and who I wanted to treat. And that was, I knew I wanted to start my own business. I didn't know exactly when, but I also knew that I wanted to work with people with Parkinson's. So I guess I started in private practice and worked for a couple of years to develop those skills, not just in clinical practice, but business skills as well, to be able to support me to go into when I started my own business. So then I started Rehab on the Road, which is a mobile exercise physiology business on the northern beaches of Sydney. And we predominantly see geriatric clients with a high number of Parkinson's clients. So because I'm mobile, I'm sort of having to do meetings here, there and everywhere. And I'm currently in the local war veterans sort of RSL. And I was going to blur my screen and I thought, no, this is fantastic. These are all the women from World War II. So I thought, no, they need to be seen. So mobile business. And then about 18 months ago, I thought I'd dip my toe into the world of IT. And so I started developing a professional development and networking platform called the EP Network. And then more recently, I've been trying to launch World Exercise Physiology Day, which is in September 23rd. And hopefully, as the years go on, it'll really start to pick up and it'll just get bigger and better. And then I guess to top things off, I also have 3.5-year-old twins at home. So to keep me busy. So that's, a little bit about me.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, look, I don't know where you get the time with all of that, but
I don't.
I've marked the 23rd on my calendar.
Fantastic.
Look, one of the things, Danny, just in sort of speaking to you, and as I sort of mentioned, obviously the audience that are here today are quite a broad audience. Do you mind just sort of sharing kind of what exactly exercise physiology is, and I guess probably being relatively new, and also probably how it differs from sort of some of the more traditional sort of areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you're spot on there. So because we are so new, we're very much in our infancy, there are still quite a few people that don't have a thorough understanding of who we are, who we treat. I actually came across a description on the comment section of LinkedIn, and I saw it and I thought that is fantastic and it encapsulates us so well. So I'm going to read it out to you. It is from Professor Robert Newton. He's well-known in the exercise physiology industry. So Professor Robert Newton of exercise medicine at Edith Cowan University, and he's also an exercise oncology researcher. So clinical exercise in management of chronic disease is essentially altering the physiology of the patient through active exercise. So cancer, cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, sarcopenia, osteoporosis, even anxiety, depression, and Alzheimer's. The patient is supported to manipulate their own endocrine, cardiovascular, respiratory, immune, neuromuscular, skeletal systems through active exercise. The best term to encompass this is exercise physiology. And I love that. And I think that when you, compare us to maybe a physiotherapist, so physiotherapists are experts in manual therapy, so hands-on treatment, and also exercise, and mainly for acute injuries. So the different types of massage and joint mobilization and things like that. So exercise physiologists, however, are experts in using exercise to manage and treat chronic diseases and injuries. So that's kind of how the two sort of differ. While we do very much overlap, there are significant differences between the two professions, and we work quite well together.
Fantastic. Yeah, look, thanks very much for that, Danny. It actually wasn't a distinction that I actually understood up until recently, so I think it's definitely something just worth clarifying.
Yeah.
One of the things, just for the guys who are on here now, and I should have said this at the start, but there's a Q&A button on your webinar section. If you've got any questions or even just comments that you're keen to share, please pop them in there and we'll definitely answer them as we go. So Danny, look, really great story up until now. So you obviously started off with a clinician and obviously a really keen focus on that specific treatment area of Parkinson's. You had to make the jump out to really starting your own business at some point, which is obviously, well, in some ways a lot different. I guess pretty keen to understand, what do you sort of consider as the most important thing? If there's people sort of sitting here today that are thinking about doing the same thing, what do you see as the most important thing in starting out?
I think the most important thing is setting up your networks and working out a plan to actually nurture those networks. So, for example, what I did was I started out working just half a day a week, and I went out and I networked, obviously using RxTro. But I networked really hard, and I just nurtured those relationships and kept going back. And so within about a few months, I had a full 38-hour-a-week caseload. So I think even if you're thinking about starting a business, before you even register for the ABN, start thinking about your networks and those referral relationships, I think is probably the biggest thing for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And look, I noticed that obviously you mentioned that RxTro was an important part of that. So, yeah, obviously keen, as I say, to understand, how did sort of RxTro sort of sit in assisting you with that?
Yeah, so I think it probably started, when I finished uni, I knew what I wanted to do, which was start a business. So I had to go and develop those skills in business, and I had to go and develop those skills in working with a really wide range of different pathologies, because I felt like I just didn't have those skills to go out on my own. So I was working for two companies at the same time, and one of those businesses I actually chose quite strategically because I knew that it would really help me in terms of business and clinical skills. So it was a very small business. It was myself. I was working underneath another exercise physiologist who was my manager, and then we had an owner pharmacist. And so that's really where I was introduced to RxTro. So my manager at the time had introduced RxTro into the business from her previous one. And I think my role there was very much working. It was from everything. I was doing everything from A to Z. So I was booking doctors' meetings. I was organising the lunches for it. I was then treating clients and taking payments and booking them in. So I was sort of responsible really for everything. And at the same time, I was also responsible for my caseload, and maintaining that. So I think it was very early on that I realised the importance of maintaining those referral relationships and nurturing them as best as possible. And so I think with RxTro, like when I was a new grad, my time management skills were pretty poor. I think with RxTro that really sort of helped me, because there was this, streamlined booking process and real-time availability. So technically I could jump on the RxTro platform at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I could look at the different appointments available at the clinics around me, match it up with my schedule, book it in, work out their dietary requirements, and then order it. And it was so quick and easy, and I could do it within 5 minutes. So it really helped in terms of my time management skills. The other thing that I found very helpful was the automatic confirmation and notifications and, reminders of appointments. So it allowed me to sort of reduce that risk of having any errors within communication for doctors' surgeries. And like I said, once me making the decision to go out on my own was very much, RxTro is very pivotal in when I actually decided to do that, because learning how to use RxTro and knowing that I could just build up this support network just, so easily, I felt quite confident in going out on my own, and I knew that I'd be able to build this up quite quickly. So, yeah, I think in terms of RxTro and helping me facilitate that, it was very, very pivotal. Yeah.
No, look, absolutely, absolutely. And that's, yeah, when I first heard that story, Danny, it was great to hear. For people sort of on the call who may be sort of wondering exactly what RxTro is, RxTro, the clinics create an account and they set up their preferences. So that might be every Tuesday, it might be 5 times a week or 10 times a week. But then fundamentally, everybody, for example, can jump on and obviously book according to availability and preferences. There's actually been a question coming, which has been fantastic. And I think it really ties into this theme, Danny, as well. There's obviously the initial establishment of those relationships, but keen to kind of understand, maintaining and nurturing, sort of what's involved with that sort of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, I sort of choose a small number of referrers and I just focus on them, because I think if you have too many, you can potentially not pay them as much attention, you can't put as much work into it. So what I tend to do is I'll go back as often as I can. And then when I first started doing the doctor's visits, I was taking information, I was taking leaflets, I was showing all these sorts of things. And then when I got there, it was very much, it turned into this chat, and and I was learning things about their life. They were learning things about my life. And it sort of came from me trying to spruik my business to me actually becoming almost not friends, but, just developing this really nice relationship. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing was, I think, if you do get a referral from someone, you need to keep in constant contact with them. So write to them, saying, obviously, thank you for the referral, but this is how your patient is going, and maintaining that as best as possible. So just keeping up the communication. If something pops up with a client of yours, make sure you're sort of connecting with the referrer. Yeah, I think are the two biggest things.
Absolutely. What would be good to understand as well, so look, obviously there's the majority of clinics in Australia are now using RxTro, but having sort of started RxTro around 10 years ago, I remember when there was no clinics that had set up their preferences online and book in. Danny, you mentioned that you'd had some experience sort of working with clinics who necessarily aren't using RxTro as well, is that right?
Yeah, I think there's a big difference when you're going to a doctor's surgery that is signed up with RxTro and one that isn't. So an example that I had, I rang up the surgery. Doctor surgeries, as we all know, can be very, very busy. So, sitting on a phone call for like 30 minutes on hold waiting to speak to the receptionist. Then we're sending emails back and forth, speaking about times, dates, dietary requirements for the doctors and things like that. And so it's quite time consuming, and I think that's where maybe potentially some errors can be made on both our part and their part. I turned up at this one doctor's surgery with, a plate full of food, and I sat down in reception and the lady sort of looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, but I don't have you booked in." So, and she said, "Look, I'm really sorry. This is something on my end." And there was no, there was no confirmations and reminders that you do get, when you're working with a practice that's signed up with RxTro. So I think that's my biggest, the biggest experience. And then in terms of barriers of working with, clinics that are signed up with RxTro, well, I don't find that there is any. It's just so easy to use. And I know I'm spruiking your business here, but I actually find it's a really genuinely great tool. And it's definitely helped me to, facilitate and grow my business.
Absolutely. And look, Danny, thanks so much for obviously describing your RxTro journey. But fundamentally, RxTro is just one tool in what would be an overarching strategy that you've got to obviously promote and engage your business. Can you walk us through kind of the other strategies that you do to grow your business?
Yeah, so I have a bit of a two-pronged approach to my rehab on the road business. So I have, your cost-based services, but I also have free services, both clinical and education service. So I'm constantly running talks for the community, which have been really, really popular. I also run health checks, so for the local community. So I might be checking blood pressure, heart rate, rhythms, grip strength, things like that. And it's a way that I can sort of access those community members who maybe aren't seeing their GPs as much. Like, for example, we recently had someone who, I flagged her blood pressure being over 200. She was someone who was never on hypertensive medication, was never seeing her GP. And obviously I shipped her down to go and see the GP. Within an hour, she was on antihypertensive. So things like that. And then it turned into her wanting to see me and me treat her for, hypertension and stuff like that. So yeah, those are the types of things. I'm also running for Parkinson's Awareness Month. I'm running I've never done an online one, so I'm doing an online talk just for people around Australia to learn a little bit more about Parkinson's and a bit of exposure for me and the business. And there's lots of different strategies that I kind of use. Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Excellent. Danny, obviously really keen to jump in and walk people through kind of the new venture that you've undertaken. The EP network, obviously a collection of resources that you've pulled together over the years. But yeah, would you mind sort of showing us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. Yeah, so to give you a bit of context, like the exercise physiology industry. Whoops. Sorry, one sec.
Oh, now we've lost Danny. Apologies, people. I'm hoping that Danny joins us back in a moment. I think she was just about to share her screen and well, look, this is first that we've had happen to us, but as I say, hopefully Danny jumps back on any moment. Whilst we're just waiting for Danny, there's been a couple of questions that have come in that I might just cover off on. So, look, probably the first one was just around, there was a question from the audience just around, do we always bring food, coffees to the doctors? Do you call the receptions to get dietaries? Look, what I always used to find was that fundamentally these GPs are really busy, and basically what they're doing is they're giving up that space in between sessions to obviously jump in and speak to you guys. So yeah, look, I always would have brought food or coffee and definitely made sure that they were dietaries. But at the end of the day, it's something that you'll get to know with the surgery and so forth. I think we've got Danny back now. Danny, I think you might be on mute, but apart from that, I think it...
Yeah, you there? So for some reason, I can't share my screen. It's not letting me do it, but that's okay. I can just tell you a little bit about it.
Okey-doke. Apologies, we should have tested that one before.
Yeah,
maybe Danny, if you could just walk us through kind of exactly what it is, and we can sort something.
Yeah, so I think for context around the exercise physiology industry, so we are
Apologies, people. We're just having a couple of technical issues here. We might even have to do a separate meeting to cover off on.
Is that better?
Yes, it's working now. So apologies, Danny.
Okay, cool. All right. So to give you a little bit of context around the exercise physiology industry, we're very much in our infancy. So we are, we've been around in Australia for the last 30 years. And compared to, say, physiotherapy that was, I think, introduced in, the 1920s or 1930s. So we're very much behind the eight ball, but we're growing at an extremely rapid pace. So in 2023, LinkedIn actually put out a list of 20 of the fastest growing job titles for the last 5 years, and exercise physiology was sitting in at number 2. And, for the most part, I didn't recognize any of the other job descriptions on that list apart from exercise physiology. So we're definitely growing at a rapid pace. But because we're, in our infancy, I think there's quite a few gaps and room for industry progression. And that's kind of where the EP network comes in. So There's currently nothing on the market at the moment where that's designed specifically for EPs. Amazing. Nice work.
Fantastic.
So there's currently nothing on the market at the moment that's designed specifically for EPs. So what I've tried to do is pull together a whole heap of resources that will try and help clinicians, researchers to, start a business, build a business, maintain a business. And there's all sorts of resources, from business resources, legal, HR, all of those things that you might need to start a business. But there's also a lot of templates in terms of clinical templates like assessments and questionnaires, and information around different sectors like the NDIS and DVA and all those different sectors that exercise physiologists work in. And I think it's important to know, like, since I've been networking for this platform, I've actually met quite a few exercise physiologists on a global scale. So there are quite a few EPs out there in other countries that I'm trying to sort of draw together to help facilitate progression in our industry. There are some lectures on here, but the platform is not necessarily about producing content. So it's more about just facilitating connections and providing resources. And so it's a shame that we can't log in here and I can show you, but essentially that's what it is. So to give you a bit of context around this, so I started up some social media pages for the EP network just before Christmas, and so far they've amassed about 5,000 followers. So it's something that I feel like our industry really needs and really wants. So hopefully in, the coming years, I'll be able to, team up with some pretty important stakeholders and really grow the network significantly. Yeah. So that's the EP network.
No, absolutely. And yeah, Danny, it is a slight shame that we weren't able to log in. Apologies about the technical.
No, that's fine. If you do want to know, if anyone wants an overview, you can find it on the EP network on LinkedIn. There's a little video there that takes you through the whole thing, so you can jump on and have a look at that.
Fantastic. Excellent. We'll look a couple of other questions that have come in.
Yeah.
If there's furthermore, someone has asked if there's any training sessions available for RxTro. It's a great question, and it's something that we are looking to set up fairly soon in terms of kind of periodic training. What I would say is that basically on the RxTro website, what you'll see is that there's a comprehensive, sorry, I've got the wrong. There's a comprehensive resources section that covers off on exactly how to get set up. So we've got what we call the 15-minute quick start guide. So for example, the representative quick start guide, it'll walk you through how to set up your list of clinics, how to obviously book in appointments, and how to tune everything to exactly the way you want. But failing that, most important thing, the support number is always at the bottom. So please either give us a call or send through an email. Always happy to help. Final question that's come in, Danny. So yeah, obviously, look, somebody very appreciated all your tips so far.
Hey, Jason.
Any other little tips before we leave everybody? Oh, sorry. Any other tips around? Yeah.
Yeah. So I tend to have a bit of a spreadsheet, and then on Excel, and then I'll have the months up the top, and then I'll have all the referrals on the side. And I'll sort of, write in there when I've made a connection in terms of going to visit them, and when I've, just to make sure that I'm sort of nurturing all of those referral relationships. In terms of contacts and things like that, I think I just have them all set up in my computer or on RxTro as well. I can find them there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, maybe if I can just add to that as well. So my background, I used to work in pharmaceuticals, and it was interesting. So obviously talking with Danny over the last year or so, and talking just before the meeting, we used to sort of talk about, kind of servicing the customers regularly. And, if you think, I always used to, when I was training reps, think about kind of people that, you see every month compared to those you see every 6 months compared to those you see every couple of years. And you sort of, when you kind of think about your friends in that category, it's the same with sort of business relationships and so forth as well. There has been a couple more last ones come in. So Danny, I think this one is definitely one the same from you. So basically, apart from the initial meet and greet letter, is there anything else you do to nurture the relationships with your referrers?
Yeah, the constant contact. And I think in terms of, like, when I mentioned before about me not actually taking networking material, I would sort of try and connect with them on a more of a personal level, but also I would sort of tie in some of the talks that I was doing. So I might take one flyer for each GP for the talks that I'm doing in the community. I might say, hey, look, any of your patients who you think might be appropriate for this talk, would you mind sending them down here? And, it's free. So I kind of tie in that with actually meeting the referrers that I'm seeing as well, if that makes sense. That's sort of another tip. Something I've found that has worked really well definitely is providing the education for the community, particularly for EPs, because I tend to start out with saying, this is what an EP is, this is what we do, this is how we can treat you. For the most part, a lot of people don't really have an understanding of what exercise physiologist is really. They have a good idea of what physiotherapists are. So, I guess it's our job to really educate them on that and let them know how we can actually help them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just one final question that's just come in the chat. So asking around any costs to use RxTro. So RxTro is a subscription service. It's basically designed to save instead of the cold calling. You can obviously just log on at 3 a.m. as Danny said, and obviously book in a bunch of meetings with customers. We have a number of plans. Essentially starts at around $30 a month. There's no commitment involved, so you can obviously sign up. If you get an annual one, it's a bit cheaper, but essentially $30, and you can be out seeing customers that week. Fantastic. Well, I think that brings us on time. And Danny, I'm conscious that obviously probably a lot of the audience have got patients booked in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, Danny, look, just a warm felt thanks from myself for obviously joining us today. As I said, it's been wonderful sort of getting out and hearing all the different stories around different people and how they've used the platform. And yeah, look, I can see how your business is clearly growing, and looking forward to more to come.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.